There are 5 questions which will be answered in this video. Firstly, what is the meaning of ownership in general? The second question is, what are the causes for the acquisition of ownership from Sharia perspective? Thirdly, why is ownership an important source of economic prosperity? The next question is, what is the impact of ownership to economic growth? And lastly, how does private ownership influence the incentive to maintain and develop the economy? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator and owner of all things in the universe, which is incongruent with Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 120. The verse stated that to Allah alone belongs the kingdom of the heavens and the earth and everything within, and He is most capable of everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has handed over to mankind the power and authorization to make use of the resources that He has thoughtfully bestowed upon them. The concept of ownership is treated with the greatest care, as the properties that are competent to be owned are well defined and specified. Because of that, the Sharia has laid down some rules and regulations to abstain owners and individuals from abusing their powers. The Sustainable Development Goal, or SDG, that we choose to relate along with this topic is SDG 18, which is economic growth. There are 2 common types of ownership, which are public and private ownership, that have their own contributions in economic growth. In this case, the type of ownership that can bring many benefits to economic growth is private ownership. Generally, most political theorists and economists have disputed that capitalism is the most efficient and productive of system exchange. Ownership, or al-milkiyah, refers to the exclusive association of a thing with a person who has the authority to deal with it in any way as long as there are no legal restrictions on it. In other words, ownership, or al-milkiyah in Islamic law, refers to the relationship between a person and their property, rendering it specifically attached to him and granting him the right to deal with it, except if a legal obstacle prevents him from doing so. The most appropriate definition of ownership, according to jurists, is an exclusive association of the owned item with its owner, giving the owner the right to deal in what he owns in any manner not prohibited by law. Now let's move to the next question. What are the causes for the acquisition of ownership from Sharia perspective? The justifications that can be used to make property permissible and legal were set out in Sharia. It is legal to hunt, use abundant land, mine an inheritance, and enter into transactional contracts to acquire property. Other methods of acquiring property, such as theft, looting, gambling, and doing so through unlawful or unfair means, are not recognized as acceptable methods. These reasons, as defined by Islamic law, are considered prohibitory reasons and have no bearing on the purchase of property. In fact, as stated in the Holy Quran, all methods that directly or indirectly use property ownership as a means of exploitation, injustice, or harm to others are prohibited. And don't eat up your property among yourselves for vanities, or use it as bait for the judge, with the intention that you may eat up other people's property wrongfully and knowingly. Al-Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 188. When a property is legally acquired, the owner is given the sole right to use it and to conduct business on the property, provided that there are no legal restrictions on those activities. Because of this exclusive ownership, no one else is permitted to use the asset or engage in business with it or without a court order, such as a guardianship or agency. The third question is, Why is ownership an important source of economic prosperity? Prosperity and property rights are linked, in which economic prosperity depends on the recognition of the importance of ownership, since it is central to how the economic system operates. The economists argue that the difference between welfare and poverty is property. The nations prosper when the private property rights are well defined and fulfilled. Hence, the ownership is significant because it provides the owners of property a strong incentive to utilize and develop their assets in ways that others value highly. Moreover, it exists to create an incentive structure in order to maximize the productivity of individuals. In the case of private property, the ownership has two essential elements, which are the exclusive right of individuals to use their resources as they see fit with regard to not violate someone else's right, and the capacity of asset owners to transfer or exchange those claims on a voluntary basis. To exemplify, corporate ownership delivers control in terms of economic and industrial processes, whereby the holders have direct control over the labor process. It has a significant impact upon the positions where the company is owned and operated, such as hiring staff and undertaking productive actions. Therefore, the standards of living for human beings become higher. In summary, the ownership matters to those who possess the prolific wealth and also to those who do not. Meanwhile, there are several resources that cannot be privately owned by individuals, such as free air, ocean, forest, rivers, water resources, and others. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has made known that Muslims are partners in three: grass, water, and fire. This property should be under the supervision of the nation, since the public ownership is likely to deliver beyond what the private sector would manage on its own. In this case, the state tends to promote long-term decision-making aimed to enhance economic and social welfare rather than short-term decision-making aimed at promoting financial gain.
Now let's move in our next questions. What is the impact of ownership to the economic growth? Change in ownership structure might be different dramatically, hence research with a shorter study period may provide different results over long time periods. Secondly, financial success in developing or transitional economies might be time dependent. Institutional impact example, the continued openness to foreign investment based of ownership concentration, creation of legal framework, protection of minority investors, and privatization procedures were critical in the time before the transition from a common economy to a market economy. As a result of the complexity of transition and weak institutions, it might appear that there is no major improvement in operational or performance even 6 years after privatization. However, as time passes by, economic variables such as being publicly listed and the quality of corporate governance begin to take precedence. The companies in the sample are not homogeneous in terms of preferable incentive to report true financial performance. It is reasonable to expect that family businesses will strive for such a characterization of profitability in order to reduce the tax burden. On the other hand, higher managers would prefer to overstate financial performance if it serves as a benchmark for their compensation. Now let's move to our last questions. How private ownership influences the incentive to maintain and develop the economy? Private ownership rights are respected in Islam if they do not give the wealthy a sense of superiority. Private ownership itself is not viewed negatively, rather it is the outcome that comes from it. In Islam, private ownership is respected if it does not result in speculating, exploitation, discrimination, disrespect for people, or extremism on the part of the wealthy. Firstly, private ownership gives individuals an incentive to use resources efficiently and effectively, as they have an interest in ensuring the investments are profitable while contributing to the well-being of their families and communities. To explain that, one could look to the example of small business owners, who are often motivated to work hard and create something of lasting value for the families and the local community due to the ownership of the businesses. Secondly, private ownership encourages investment in research and development by providing the work for those that innovate. This can lead to increased productivity and economic growth as businesses encouraged to stay ahead of the competition by investing in innovative technology and creating new products or services. Private ownership gives individuals the freedom to choose how they want to invest their resources, which can lead to increased entrepreneurship and job creation, which in turn can lead to greater economic stability and improved living standards for the public. In addition, when individuals have the freedom to choose how their resources are invested, they can take greater responsibility for the success of their investment and actively work toward achieving the best returns. This in turn can create new industries, generate taxes for the government, and stimulate economic growth. Ultimately, these benefits of private ownership can be seen in many different countries around the world, as it allows people to take greater control of their finances and investment and provide a more stable and secure environment for businesses to thrive. As a result, the economic benefits of private ownership are clear, and the importance of individuals owning and controlling their own resources should not be underestimated. In conclusion, though there has been much debate to explain the concept of ownership in the Islamic economic model, the SDG linked with this topic is SDG 18, which refers to economic growth. This made evident by the meaning of ownership in general in the Islamic law that can be used to make property permissible and legal were set out in Sharia. In addition, there are the causes for the acquisition of ownership from Sharia perspective, meaning that it's legal to hand use it, abandoned land, mine inheritance, and enter to transactional contract to acquire property. Then we go through the reasons that make ownership an important source of economic prosperity by the higher incentive to work, save, and invest. Afterward, we saw the impact of ownership to the economic growth. Lastly, we discussed the way private ownership influences the incentive to maintain and develop the economy by providing individuals with a financial incentive to use resources efficiently and productively, encourage the investment in research and development by rewarding those that innovate, and allow individuals to decide how they want to invest their resources. When people acquire property ownership in the right way and fully utilize their properties, the economic growth can be achieved and everyone can enjoy the ownership peacefully and justice.